All right, well, why don't we, for the sake of time, get started. It's great to have you back this week. Everyone who's joining us, we're seeing some familiar faces throughout the series. We've also had some new folks come and go. Want to go over a couple of things tonight as we deal with some of our housekeeping items. And then we'll get, of course, into the heart of the session. But my name is Deb Turcott. I am the principal at ORIANA Solutions and the host of this webinar series. I want to thank you again, as we've talked about before, for taking the time to invest in yourself. But I also want to take this moment to thank our speakers. We have just had the greatest blessing bestowed upon us in the professional world to have women who are willing to volunteer their time and share their talents and their gifts and their experiences with all of us. So I'm particularly feeling grateful tonight and just felt like we needed to start the session with that. Also want to remind all of you that if you haven't had the pleasure of seeing some of the other sessions that we have been able to offer over the last couple of months, that you are welcome to email us at connect@orianasolutions.net in order to get those video links. But we've also heard from some of the folks who have reached out to us that the links are getting put into their spam email boxes, so your junk mail folder. So if you have reached out and you have not, or you think you haven't received them, I'd encourage you to check there. The other thing I will tell you is that we've made all of the previous sessions publicly viewable on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you search for ORIANA Solutions and click on the videos tab, you'll see all of the previous sessions. So just wanted to remind you about those. Then also want to give you a quick reminder about next week's session, which is with Caitlin Jurls. She's just switched jobs, so that'll be really exciting for us to hear from her about that part of her journey. But she's been most recently with the University of Florida, their College of Veterinary Medicine, as the career counselor there. But she will be talking about recruiters. And if you've ever been ghosted by a recruiter, you'll want to come to this session. But Caitlin's job that she's just taken is as a recruiter. And so it's the work that she used to do, but she'll be talking to everyone about demystifying how to work with a recruiter, some of the things that happen with search firms, and what you can expect and how you can leverage them for your own success. Then after that, we'll have the session with Melissa Pratt, who's going to talk to us all about personal style and confidence. And I actually just had a call with her this week where she was telling me how she has a great makeup artist that's going to spend some time with everyone about how to very quickly put on your best face to help yourself feel confident for a virtual interview. And then she also has Saks Fifth Avenue lined up to talk a little bit about style and fashion as it relates to current trends in the workforce. Even though most of us, I know, I was just saying to Ellen, how it's been lovely in North Florida, and I've been able to work in shorts and a t-shirt for this week. When we're in a Zoom environment and we need to be on camera, we obviously have to have a little bit more style than my shorts and a t-shirt look gives us. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to make sure that everyone is able to hear us. So if you can't hear us for any reason, please feel free to put that in the chat. And want to welcome you. And I want to thank Ellen for joining us tonight. Ellen is just the most amazing person that I've gotten to know over the past year. I've been really grateful for the journey that we've been able to take together. And the way that I got to know Ellen is because as I left my last role and was really considering whether or not I wanted to open my own business, Ellen was one of those trusted partners for me, where I had the opportunity to have a sounding board, to think about articulating who I was as a professional and what I had to offer. And we were actually able to translate that, instead of going for another executive role, into opening my own business. And so I have personally benefited from her, but she is with Florida Training Solutions and Lee Height Harrison. And I can tell you that if LinkedIn is any judge of character, Ellen is a superstar. Because as soon as I put out there on LinkedIn the fact that she was going to be speaking to all of us tonight, it was like the world erupted and celebrated Ellen. And so, Ellen, I'm just really grateful that you're joining us tonight and going to share about professional brand and how to really understand brand and how to build your brand and some of the tactical exercises that we can go through as people in order to do that. So just going to pause for a second and just say thank you for joining us.
So happy to be here, and I look forward to our conversation and the discussion that we'll have with everyone that's on the call tonight.
Excellent. And so with that, we're just going to get started. We do still have people who are joining us, so I will be admitting people as we go through. And as a reminder, please feel free to use the chat function. I will be watching that throughout the course of the evening to monitor any questions that you might have for Ellen. We're going to do this interview style, and that way I'll be asking a series of questions that we've already prepared, but then you can infuse them through the chat and I'll be happy to add them to our list as we go through. But I thought, Ellen, if you don't mind, for just a minute, maybe you could take a second and tell everyone a little bit about yourself. And then also, when I came to you, you were, I think, the first or second person I came to with this idea for the webinar series. When I asked you about joining us for this, what inspired you to say yes? So if you could, just tell our viewers a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So just a little bit about who I am. I have been a talent development coach focusing particularly on career development and transition, as well as leadership and professional development. And I've been in the talent development field for over 20 years. And during that time, I have really had an opportunity to support professionals as they navigate their unique professional journey. And I love watching clients connect to their full professional potential and capabilities, watch them get engaged, reach their goals. And that really motivates me and brings me a lot of joy. And so with that in mind, when you called me and chatted about this opportunity and, really speaking to women that have been, had some changes based on the pandemic and been impacted, whether that's personally, professionally, all of the above. And, what was interesting is I did have an opportunity to watch some of the earlier sessions and they were remarkable. And in Michelle's session, she brought up a slide that highlighted that women are disproportionately affected by this, both economically and, professionally. And I'm really honored to share any insights or experiences I have been able to gather during this time in my career and join this dialogue with amazing women. And as you all, bring what you have to the marketplace. And so, honestly, having a strong professional brand is liberating. It makes you feel very confident and, valued so professionally. So I'm excited about being on this call.
Well, we're grateful to have you, and I consider all of us that will get to see this live tonight or the recorded version later very fortunate to learn from your wisdom and your experience. So maybe from there, it might be helpful just to break down what is a professional brand. If you could tell everyone, what does that mean actually? Because I think there's a lot of varying opinions about what that is. So giving them context for tonight, I think would be a great way to start.
Right. And there's so much information about your professional brand out there. If you Google that, you'll have, I can't tell you how many pages of links to read about it. But basically, it is your professional story. It is the story that you're telling people that you interact with, whether those people are, family and friends or professional colleagues or potential employers or your network. And it's basically, to me, it's like you are speaking or you're putting out there a billboard about yourself and what you want people to know about you and remember about you. It includes very distinguishable, marketable techniques and strengths and values. And those can really help you accelerate your career. So, having a strong brand is really the foundation of your professional, opening up professional doors, moving throughout your career, and being able to drive your own car in your career and having some control over where you take that. And so it's kind of like the core foundation for knowing who you are professionally.
Yeah, and I remember when we went through the exercise, you know, even though I wasn't going to be applying for any roles or that type of thing, we still went through that exercise because opening a consulting firm, for me, I was the brand, right, of the firm. And so I became, in essence, and the team that's with me became the product. And so it was still a really useful experience. And the other thing that I would add is what a value to remind yourself and affirm for yourself right now. So if you've had challenges, or perhaps you didn't choose to leave the role that you were in most recently, it is a great way to remind yourself of your value. And so I'm excited for some of the ways that you're going to talk with folks about all of these elements tonight. But how does that brand, how does it connect into your overall career strategy? So what role does that play, and how do all of those points touch each other?
That's a great question. And I like to think of your career strategy as a three-legged stool. There are three main components of that. And you want to make sure that all three of these are strong and they can support you, support your progression in your career. And the first one is your performance and your skill set. And so, you have control over those things, and that builds your reputation, having a strong level of performance, and being able to continue to be a lifelong learner and adding more skills to your skill set. The second thing in this sort of three-legged stool of your career is your network. And I know you've talked about network. Michelle talked about networking. I believe that's been a common thread throughout most of the sessions. And tonight won't be any different. But having a strong network, if I had to say there's a silver bullet in terms of your career, that would be it, although there isn't. But I would say having a strong network and, of course, giving and getting from that network, it's a give-get relationship, is one of the things that really opens doors for you in your career. And then this third leg is your brand and your reputation. And they go hand in hand, honestly. Having a strong brand, knowing who you are professionally, what value, just like you said, what value you will bring to an organization, and being able to articulate that, not only verbally, but also in all of your marketing platforms that you utilize, whether that's LinkedIn or other Twitter or any other social media, as well as in your writing, your resume, all of those things. Having a strong brand allows you to market yourself in the way you want to be seen, and what you would like to have in the future, what kinds of doors you want open in the future. So I really think it's truly equally important for all of those stool legs to be really strong. But branding is at the core. If you don't know who you are professionally, it's really difficult to do the others, so that's really part of that career strategy.
Well, and I think you're so right. And when Susanna Fier talked to us early, it seems like a long time ago when we started the series, early in the series, and talked about communicating your value, when we mentioned to all of our viewers, that it was great to practice certain things before an interview, and to make sure that you can record yourself in your Zoom, so you're really being able to communicate with confidence. What Ellen is talking about with this professional brand and the branding statement, that's one of those things that you want to feel so smooth running off your lips once you've developed it, because it does become a representation of you. So I think that's great. So where do people start? Like, if they want to, how do you build your professional brand? How does that come to be for people?
Well, I think most important is to start with what you value and where your purpose lies. And so what's important to you, and being able to identify that value, the values that you want to bring, and the values that are kind of at the core of who you are as a person, and particularly as a professional, is important. So I know you've talked about that before in some of the other sessions. If the attendees have not sat down to think about what their purposes and what their values are professionally, I think that what's important to them, I think that's an important exercise. So I put that on my homework assignment if you haven't already done that. And then the second thing I would do is come up with a list look back on your career. I love that kind of that 2020 vision, and looking backward and asking yourself, in all the different roles and positions I've been in, and even, you know, within certain projects that I may have been asked to run, what did I love to do? Where did I get the greatest joy? Where was I most engaged, most productive, happiest? All of those things, and begin writing those down, and ask yourself as you write them down, why? You know, why was I so happy? Was it the group of individuals I was working with? Was it that collaborative team environment? Was it my leader? You know, was that person someone who was truly a mentor, allowed me a lot of autonomy? I was kind of an entrepreneur in my own, you know, my own group. Or was it because there was a lot of investment in professional growth and professional development, and I really appreciated that. So kind of synthesize what you want and what you like. I would also go into another list, which is, you know, you have been in situations where it was the opposite of that, complete opposite of that. I wasn't happy. I wasn't engaged. I was looking for ways to get out of that situation or out of that position. And also ask yourself why, you know, why was that the case? And make that list of no ways, you know, in my next role, in my next step in my career. If you want to think about your career as a climbing wall, which I think is one of the best visuals that you can have about your career. You know, you're going to take certain handholds and footholds as you go through your career, and think about, you know, where do you not want to put your foot? Where do you not want to put your hand? And those are things you would like to stay away from, as it relates also, you know, to building your brand. So knowing right away what your purpose is, what you value, what you like and what you don't like, career-wise, I think is the beginning of knowing how to now position myself and highlight the things that I love to do and I would like to do for you, my next employer. So that's the beginning piece.
Yeah, and I just really have to reinforce that. And I feel like that's another theme that we've shown throughout the course of this webinar series. And I know sometimes people chuckle when I'm coaching them and I'm talking to them about writing something down. Some people will take it and run with it, and it yields huge benefits for them. But then there are others who are like, well, that's silly. I kind of already know that. I promise you that the exercise of writing things down creates clarity for you in your mind. And so many of the people that we all coach, the speakers who are part of this series, really are challenged by some sort of dissonance between who they are as a person and their value system and the role that they're currently in, or the role they just left, or some sort of dissatisfaction with where they are. And that's because we don't always center on our value system. And so Ellen is right on point with this. And I want to drive it home for all of you, because if you haven't taken the time and you think writing something down might be, I don't know, slightly silly, or sounds like it's, you know, elementary school age, understanding your values is truly part of who you were as a child, and it's part of who you are now, and it's worth the time of doing that. So I really appreciate that insight, Ellen. What so here we are, they've written down their values, right? They're starting to work through this journey. What is a branding statement? Like, what are the components? How does that work? How does that connect to what you were just talking about?
So a branding statement is a verbal conversation with someone, and that could be if you are in a networking meeting and someone says, oh, tell me a little bit about yourself, or hi, you know, Ellen, nice to meet you. What do you do? You know, those kinds of things that come out of a formal or informal conversation with people. And I think one place to start, there are multiple versions of this, but I think everyone should have that 30-second elevator pitch ready to go. And that's a good place to start. You might need a longer version of that for an interview, where many times interviewers will start that process by saying, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they may want a little bit longer. I would say a minute to a minute and a half of an introduction, highlighting again who you are professionally, but tying that back to what they're looking for. So that's a sales and marketing approach to your branding statement. But for the 30-second elevator pitch, what we're really looking at is thinking about, you know, do you know yourself? How am I going to introduce myself? And so, for instance, I might say that I am a agile certified career consultant with expertise in career transition, career development, and leadership coaching. And so that really tells someone quickly what I do and who I am. I have to say that a lot of times, even family and friends, if you ask them, what do I do? They probably couldn't tell you. So when you're coming up with that first piece of who I am make sure it is a description that people understand. Because sometimes we have so much, general terms, abstract terms in that, and they're listening for, what is it you do? Are you an accountant? Are you a project manager? Are you a veterinarian? I mean, what are you? And sometimes we don't ever hit that for them. And so they walk away a bit confused. So right away, I would say really hone in on how you identify yourself as a professional. The second piece of that is, how are you different? What makes you uniquely you as a professional? And these are strengths and qualities that you want them to remember about you. So, it might be for a project manager, they might say something like, I'm a certified PMP, project management professional. Mm-hmm. I also have strong experience in leveraging and managing multifunctional teams across a very, broad group of internal organizations. And then they may also say that I have expertise in managing budgets, timelines, and system requirements to meet the company goals. So right away, we've identified 3 things, and you can have more than that, but I would say as a homework assignment, at least identify 3 unique qualities that you would like your audience to walk away with. And that comes right after how you introduced yourself. So that's the second piece. And then another piece I like to add is a career highlight, or something that, you again are most proud of. And it doesn't have, it can be a career highlight, or again, it could just be something that is sort of your value prop. It's a little introduction to your value proposition. And for me, I might say something like, I've been fortunate enough to link professionals and helping them build their network. And many of those connections have led to career opportunities, new jobs, and lifelong professional friendships. So that's actually something I'm particularly proud of in my career. And so I hope that, that resonates with people, and they think of me, they think, she's someone who helps make connections. And that's what I'd like. And, that's a value prop. I think that might differentiate me somewhat, is that have a fairly significant network and also open to connecting people to it. So those 3 pieces, again, who I am professionally, 3 unique qualities that highlight the value that you will bring to an organization, and that 1 career highlight, or extra special, unique set of skills that you bring to the table is a nice way to wrap it up.
Yeah, and I love how you've used those 3 distinct pieces to meld together to create the one statement. And I think, another real value to having those different elements of the statement are that when you're in an interview or you're having that conversation, you can always use those as a launching point for an additional. So when they ask a follow-on question, you already have sort of this standing place that you can go from to answer the rest of the questions, because you've introduced some of those key concepts. And so I also think it's great to have, thought about, well, what questions might they ask as a result of my branding statement, so that I'm prepared for those potential questions. And I already have thought about what those answers might be in an interview. So I love that you give that, because I do think that creates a conversation in an interview, as opposed to just stating what your typical title would be, right? We didn't stop there. We kept going with this branding statement. And you mentioned the value proposition, which I just, is probably one of my favorite parts of our conversations that we have. So can you tell folks a little bit about what that is and what that means for them and how they can construct a value proposition statement?
Right. So a value proposition differs slightly from a branding statement. It goes deeper into where you have added specific examples of where you have added a value in your professional life and whatever career movement you've had. So those are, one of the things I like for my clients to do, and that would be to make a list of the things you're most proud of. And your career. Go back to each one of your jobs. I always say, at least give me three things in each one of your roles that you're particularly proud of, that you remember they made an impact, whether that impact was on mentoring one of your teammates and that person then was promoted, and you got to watch that. I mean, you may say that was one of my proudest moments personally. It might be that you helped to implement some new system, which really transformed the way the business was done, saved, tons of efficiencies, saved time, saved money. It could be a remarkable number of things. Of course, we've all have those. And one of the things that you bring up, Deb, is this idea of the board that you can come up, and it's like that capability board, and you go up and you write on a piece of paper, or you can do it on a Word document or wherever it is. Again, we're going back to this writing thing, but actually write down those accomplishments. In those accomplishments are embedded in them, honestly, are these skills, these natural, qualities that you have that allowed you to accomplish those particular outcomes. And so, for instance, someone who, was able to mentor someone, you think back, what are some skills that were embedded in that? It may be, rapport building. It was the ability to be honest and give good feedback. It may have been someone who is willing to partner and take ownership. And so there could be some, again, underlying skills. And I love it when people can really flesh those out and identify what it is that allows them to be successful. And now when you are in your interview or you are talking to someone and you understand what their needs are and what they're looking for, there's your value proposition. You're going straight back to the things that you have. You have those. These are, truly examples of my work where I've done very similar things that you are looking for. I've done those things. I can bring that. I bring that when I walk in the door, that comes with me. And I can do that for you as well. So having those accomplishments written out, identifying what those key skills are that helped you accomplish those, I think are the first steps identifying your value proposition. And that value proposition obviously is very tailored and customized for the audience, for whomever it is that you're speaking with. It's not a one size fits all. And you've got so many, you can pick and choose what's going to make most sense in the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah, and you're right. This is a place where I get super excited when I work with clients. We've talked about this before together, and and I often call it the confidence building board. Like when someone has been through a difficult journey with a previous leader or boss, and sometimes is second guessing themselves, to do this exercise where, big piece of paper on the wall, again, the writing thing. Ellen and I are both really big on writing things down. But you're literally listing the things that you have done. And then you can take that list in so many different directions. But Ellen's right. If you can, when we started this conversation with Ellen, she mentioned how you can celebrate the things that you loved, and that helps you think about your brand. That can go on this board that you have, as well as when you circle things that are, have resonated with you, you can write next to it data. So, in that particular area, we increased this from this point to that point. So your value proposition can translate to your resume. It can translate to answering interview questions, but it also translates to remembering and being confident about what you bring to the table. And I think really, Ellen, it's so powerful for you to tell us and remind us that, you know, we have a professional brand, but that brand stands on this value proposition, that what we bring to a potential employer or to the relationships that we hold. So I love that space. And you were so helpful for me when I was going through that journey to remember so many of those things. So maybe we can transition a little bit. So we've talked about the brand and how to create the branding statement. We've talked about the value proposition and teased out some exercises and some writing that people can do. But so how does this connect to where we use this? So where do we use our branding statement? How do we showcase our brand? What are the tools or the avenues that you see this really playing out in real time for our viewers?
Absolutely. So there are many versions of this, as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation. So a version of your brand will also be at the top of your resume as an introduction. Sometimes people put that in as a professional profile. Sometimes people will say summary, executive summary, whatever. So that is a version of where we typically on a resume, you don't use an I statement as I did in my, example for my branding statement. But, you may start out with Agile Certified Career Consultant. That's, a neutral voice. But here I'm going to put that same professional brand at the top of my resume. And I want it to make sure that that is very similar to how I would answer the question, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then you also have a version of that on your LinkedIn profile. I would say there are two areas on LinkedIn that particularly you need to highlight your brand, and that would be your headline that's underneath your name at the top of your LinkedIn profile. And then the other area is in the About section. The About section is, and LinkedIn is moving, and I was able to hear Mercedes last week in her session, and she talked about the About section utilizing personal pronouns. So you can start with I. And so it's much more conversational on your About section of LinkedIn. But again, a version of your branding statement needs to be there as well. And it doesn't have to be identical, but it needs to be aligned. It needs to have, and I have to say, I've had many recruiters and hiring managers say to me over the years, it was really interesting to get the resume. And then I went to the LinkedIn profile and I didn't think I was looking at the same person. So it is so important that brings up a big question mark to them. Who is the real Ellen Kelbert? So I think that's important. And in the About section on LinkedIn, though, you can add a lot more. This is a place where you can really talk about what you're passionate about. You can also add a lot of, if you have a few testimonials, they can go in there as well, but or quotes. So there's things that you can do on your About section. It might be a little bit expanded from your branding statement. You can also have a version, maybe a tagline that really aligns with your branding statement under your signature on your email. If you are thinking about a consulting practice like Deb has, having a tagline that really highlights who you are as whether it's a consultant or a consulting company, or even just personally, if you like to have something at the bottom of your name, that's, again, it needs to align with your brand. And Twitter is another place, of course, networking, and anything where you are communicating to someone about yourself, introducing yourself, that's where you're going to use some version of your branding statement. And whether it's a more condensed version like a tagline, or it's going to be a much more expanded version, potentially in an interview or in on your About statement.
Yeah, I think those are great examples. And if we tie back to some of the other things that Mercedes was showing last week when we talked about the potential development of an online portfolio where you actually set up your own sort of website or blog or that kind of thing. Michelle talked about it as well, that making sure all of these pieces stay connected to and align with your brand, so that, and when you're sharing things on LinkedIn, making sure that those pieces don't go off brand. It doesn't create what we would call a brand distraction. So it doesn't all of a sudden confuse someone about who you are, what you stand for, what's important to you in your professional career. But so the good news is, if you do some of these writing exercises, you'll get to use them in a lot of different places. So there's a lot of bang for your buck with the effort that you'll put in. But if you watch some of the session from last week on building your portfolio online using Wix or something like that. That's another place where all of the things that Ellen is talking about would be a great place to plug those in. And so let's say we've gone through the exercise, right? We've done the writing pieces that we've talked about for tonight. You know, we understand a little bit better about our own brand. We've written the statement. We understand our value proposition. What are some of the other ways that we can invest? How do we build our brand over time so that people know about us? So, you know, Michelle talked about the networking element, and, you know, her big questions were, you know, do they think of you? And if they do, what do they think of you? So how do we help our viewers think about investing in their brand so that people do think of us, and they think of us in the way that we want them to think of us?
Right. So, I mean, the foundation again goes back to that career capability formula. I just want to make sure I make that tie-in of that three-legged stool. So, you know, everything you do, I just want to, you know, I like to think about any interaction that you have, whether that is on social media or over the phone or by email, is a signature. You've signed off on that interaction. And that signature, that event that you participated in, you want to make sure that aligned with your brand. So it really puts a little bit, and you need to be thoughtful and intentional about your communication efforts, no matter what platform we're talking about or what medium we're talking about. So I would say one of the things that you can do is to, and Michelle talked a lot about this, but, and so did Mercedes, but that is to be active on LinkedIn. I think that's one of the easiest things that you can do. There's so many opportunities there. One is to post, and that would be to post, you know, content that you've created yourself and that aligns with your brand. Normally, this is an area of expertise for you. Again, that it fits very well into your values, what you want to be known for. It's a great way to get your name out there. But there are some people that, you know, and there's some great help under the help section that can help you understand what's the difference between a post and something else. And it walks you through how to do that. So there's lots of help on LinkedIn on what to do and how to do that. And then making sure that you also comment, share, and again, anything you comment on and share, don't forget that needs to align with your brand and your values. So when you share something on LinkedIn, you can make a comment at the top of it. You can ask a question. You know, I found this really interesting. I particularly like this piece or this point that the author brought up. How about you? What resonates with you? And that can generate some interest and some comments. And more people comment on it or like it or view it, understand that the way LinkedIn works and the algorithm, other people that aren't even connected to you are going to be able to see it. And so you're getting your brand out there by really small steps. And I like to ask people to take some time. You don't have to do this too often because you don't want to overdo it either. Can be a fine line on too much activity on LinkedIn and just the right amount of activity on LinkedIn. But I would say is, you know, give yourself a couple of days a week where you really think about, you know, I want to do something intentional on LinkedIn to move my brand forward. Networking is one of the biggest things that you can do as well. There's so many places to network. I love meetup.com as a place to go to see if there are any free special interest groups that are meeting. Most of those are virtually now, but everything from Agile to, you know, there are meetup groups on real estate, on professional women's meetups. And that's just another way for you to utilize and practice your branding statement and grow your network, and also get out there and share your knowledge and expertise with others. They'll start to think about you when something comes up. You know, oh, I saw that, you know, that Deb posted this or shared this on LinkedIn, and I'm dealing with that particular situation. I think I'm going to reach out to her and see what her thoughts are. So you'll really begin to have some really good value exchange between your networks. And I would say also look at utilizing hashtags on LinkedIn, or actually using hashtags in many different places. But hashtags, if you put a hashtag at the end of when you've posted something, anyone else that's following that hashtag or utilizes that hashtag, you're going to come up and they're going to see your work. They're going to see your post. They're going to see your share. And it's also a way for you to just even go into the search bar in LinkedIn and put a hashtag. I might put a hashtag career consulting. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to see people, jobs. I'm going to see post and content, groups I can join for that hashtag that really aligns with who I am professionally or what I care about. So think about that as a way to join some like-minded individuals on LinkedIn out in the community. And then I would also follow thought leaders that are in the same lane as you, that have the same interests as you, that align with your brand. There are many of them out there. And again, the hashtags are really nice ways to begin to locate some thought leaders that align with what you, with your brand. One other thing I might suggest is either to act as a mentor to others that, you know, are maybe starting a similar career trajectory as yours. Giving that hand up is an amazing way to strengthen your brand, to share your brand, and also to sometimes look for a mentor and someone that you look up to and respect. You've, you know, I've had many mentors in my lifetime, and I often think about what drew me to those individuals. And it, of course, usually for me, it was their leadership style was fascinating to me, and I wanted to learn more. And so you can ask them to be a mentor. And if that happens, again, a great way to just expand your network, number one. Usually are great and they know a lot of folks and make introductions, might get you some exposure you've never had before so that you can get your brand out there in a new and different way. And I think another thing is just looking for opportunities to be present, you know, to be present in your brand, to live it, to talk to people about what you do in crazy places. You know, the line in the grocery store, in an elevator. I mean, it can happen anywhere. And being present and looking for opportunities to share your brand, I think is particularly interesting. I wanted to share a story about one of the individuals that I'm working with right now. And she posted on LinkedIn how she was handling her job search. And she's an IT professional, and she's utilizing an IT methodology. She has actually taken a formula and taken the process of job searching and put it into this formula. It is so amazingly organized. I'm just completely, you know, unbelievably excited about it for her and for me, because I get to watch this in front and blooming in front of me. But what happened was when she posted that on LinkedIn, she, you know, said, I am in transition, and I've decided to take the things that I know best in this methodology and utilize it as the formula for my transition. And so she got people that didn't know that she was in transition reach out. Several of them said, please send me a copy of your resume. We have some openings in our department or in my company, and I think you'd be a great fit. We've worked together in the past. I'd love to work with you again. So, you know, that was one of the most, you know, I think one of the most positive outcomes, but at the same time, she really aligned with her background. That was a perfect alignment of brand and posting and networking all in one post. So I thought I'd share that with you.
Wow, yeah, she definitely gets gold stars for connecting all of those things. I was trying to play out in my head for other lines of work, how they might use that, you know, to their advantage. I haven't quite come there yet, but stellar work on her part. You know, you and I talked about this a long time ago, Ellen, but we didn't talk about it necessarily for tonight, but I think it's worth bringing up for people. We've talked about how to post and stay on brand. But when I did the kickoff session, I talked a little bit about a book called The Leader's Edge by Susan Hodgkinson that really talks about brand and also gives people some exercises or tools to work through. But one of the really value points that she makes is around asking for feedback from other people about your brand. So I think we've done a good job tonight of really covering the virtual elements of brand and LinkedIn and the posting, et cetera. But maybe if you could, in just like a minute or two, give people some, maybe some tips or some techniques on how to ask for feedback about your brand. Because sometimes we we want to be a certain way, but every behavior doesn't align with it. Michelle talked about it a little bit as blind spots in our behavior when it comes to networking. But if you could just give a few pieces of advice, that would be great.
Right. And I think it's interesting because that brings up the reputation too. So, you know, the brand and the reputation are very closely aligned. The reputation is the stories other people tell about you. Brand is what story you're telling about yourself.
Right.
I would say that I would ask trusted advisors, people that you know will give you honest feedback, and you know you want to set it up that way. I'm crafting my brand. I'm being very intentional about my brand and how I want to be seen in the professional world. And I really would love to get your feedback on how this sounds, how this aligns with what you know about me, and also, you know, any feedback that you have. Was it clear? Was it concise? Was it compelling? You know, those three C's are important. And I would ask several different individuals because, you know, they're going to all have a slightly different point of view, but what you're looking for there are some nuggets of great feedback, that things that you can change, as well as some consistent sort of common threads that they are all mentioning as they listen to your brand. And you can do that. I think, you know, vocally is really important so they can see you and see your nonverbals as well as your, you know, listen to the words that you're saying. And you could also share it as part of your resume. If you wouldn't mind taking a look at my LinkedIn profile, again, my about section, and ask for that feedback there as well. But I agree with you. I think understanding how other people perceive what you're saying and getting their feedback is important, as well as listen, like you said, recording and listening to it yourself. Sometimes we're our own, you know, harshest critics, and so that's a good activity as well. So, great.
Yeah, I was working with a client recently who it's actually been put on a performance plan, and so you know, she's challenged by this, but it was, instead of seeing that as an entirely negative piece, it was a great opportunity to work through how she intended to be received versus how she was being perceived. And you know, the intentions were all absolutely where they should have been, but the actions and how she was perceived were not aligned with what she wanted her brand to be. And so, you know, we don't form relationships in a vacuum. There's always at least two people in that relationship. And so that feedback element and making sure that we're open to what can come from other people will help us not only ensure that our brand and our value proposition are have integrity, right? They represent who we really are, but also that our behaviors align with that and that other people see that brand in action. So thank you for taking that extra question from me tonight. Was there anything else? I know we're basically out of time, but was there anything else that we can leave folks with tonight, or anything that you wanted to add into the equation? And I'll see if any other questions come up on chat.
I would say that, you know, sometimes people ask me, you know, I'm not sure if my brand is what every company wants. And I just wanted to let you know that you really want to know who you are, what value you bring to an organization, what you value as a professional, and what your purpose is, and understand that there is an organization out there that is looking, many organizations out there that are looking for that. And you don't have to be a fit for every single job. And that's just not possible. But be really confident and sure in your brand. And there is going to be an organization that's going to be so happy to have you on their team. And you'll add tremendous value and be an important asset. So be confident. Go through the exercises that we talked about today, because I think they're just a great use of your time. And they'll really give you lots of benefit in the future as you charge your career.
Yeah, what a great way that's a great way to wrap up the conversation. I think when we talked with Amy earlier in the series about following your passion, and even earlier in this session, and we talked about dissonance between, your value system and who you might be working for, or the culture there, or that type of thing, you're right. You know, understanding your own brand, your own value proposition, your value system, so that your career can match that purpose within you is so powerful. And if you haven't experienced it, I promise you, when you do, you will, it'll be like the light came on in your career path. And so Ellen is right on point with that. Well, Ellen, I just want to say thank you again for sharing tonight. I know all of our live viewers, I'm sure, are taking things from this, and all those that will watch this later on. So again, thank you for doing this with us.
It was a pleasure, and I'm so happy to be here and talking with you today and with the rest of the team that's on the call. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And for everyone that's on the call, just a reminder again about next week with Caitlin Jurls, that she is going to be talking to us about recruiters and search firms. And if you are applying for a role with any size of organization that uses recruiters and contract recruiters that are out there, which are a different animal than those that work within a company, she's going to cover all of that next week. And then Melissa Pratt will be talking with you the following week all about personal style and how that influences our confidence and the impression that we make and how we feel about ourselves in an interview, whether virtual or in person. And then I'll close out the series with a session on leadership and how you can live as a leader, love it at every level, regardless of title, and go over some of the latest trends in leadership and what the workforce is expecting from us. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. Really grateful to have you. And if you missed a session and you don't seem to be getting it via email and have requested it, don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Oriana Solutions, or you can email us at connect@orianasolutions.net. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great night.